Looking at the piece of news that I am going to break to you right now, yesterday being April's Fool and all that, I didn't really think that it was real. But now that it has been there by Boundary to Comics, check them out on Twitter. They have always inside information. Well, I can't help but saying this is real shit. Now we're going to talk about that. And it turns out that Warner Media, DC Films, they have decided that the New Gods is not the movie that they want to make, and Ava Duvernay's vision is being canned. Reads, quote, after nearly 3 years of pre-production apiece, Warner Bros. Has announced that they will be passing on both the Ava DuVernay and Tom King-helmed New Gods film and the James Wan and Peter Safran's Aquaman spin-off movie, The Trench, end quote. Now, this is something that, according to my knowledge and experience, tells me that they are in full throttle against the Snyder Cut and the Snyderverse altogether. Why? Because there has been a group of fans, mainly those very same fans that wanted the Snyder Cut in the first place, who are now clamoring for the restoration of the whole of the Snyderverse, because it is a vision that they want to see go through according to what they saw in Justice League, now that it is available on HBO Max. Of course, we know what Ansarnov had to say about that, stating that this is a toxic fandom. It's baffling to me, really, that they are doing all this thing, because if you remember, prior to the release of the Snyder Cut, Snyder himself, appeared on a live stream trying to raise money for the suicide prevention, suicide awareness, and he distanced himself from Geeks and Gamers, who were the ones that were organizing the whole thing. Why? Well, my hunch and my guess back then was that it had been a studio-mandated thing. And of course, it was like a sort of threat to his career, but also to his continuation with, in this case, Warner. And I think that if that was the case, then he should have like something of a sure thing going on for himself, not only in Warner, but all on the whole of Hollywood. And the fact is that I don't see this particular move from them as confirmation that they are happy with Zack Snyder, that they want him on board again, or even that I don't see any point in why they asked him to just quit like that, promoting himself and his film and all that with people that they deem quote-unquote undesirable because of the buzzwords that are thrown around Geeks and Gamers and similar groups. Hence the hatred against the Zack Snyder group that wanted the movie to be released. That is, they are hate groups, they are ists and foes, and you know the drill. All that jazz that happens every single time that these groups are mentioned. Now, the article also has the statement provided by Warner Brothers to The Hollywood Reporter, who first broke the news, that reads as follows, quote, as part of our DC slate, some legacy development titles, including New Gods and The Trench, will not be moving forward. And of course, for me, this means that Ava DuVernay is out the window. And considering that also Tom King was working on that thing, I can only say this is great news. Why? Because Tom King is one of those writers that really can't write to save his own life. He always projects himself and his traumas in every single character and in every single situation that he encounters in the comic book writing process. For example, his Vision graphic novel, and also more evident in his Batman run, and also that Crisis thing that I particularly didn't read, but which I heard was not really that good because it was all filled with traumas from Tom King. And also King being something of an arsehole, and I know that, I am against cancel culture by all means, of course, but Tom King is a real dick to his peers and mostly people in general, and I believe that we are better off without him, really. Upon hearing the news, Ava Duvernay, the writer attached to the project and director as well, took to Twitter to write the following, quote, "Tom, I loved writing Nougat with you. I'm upset that the saga of Bard, Scott, Granny, Highfather, and the Furies ends this way. Diving into Kirby's fourth world was the adventure of a lifetime that can't be taken away. Thank you for your friendship, and remember, hashtag Darkside is," end quote. So, for this, and given the language used here, I think that this came as a surprise to her as well, because she is saying, basically speaking, that this story is ending. However, if you see the report, the statement from Warner Brothers, they were not closing the doors entirely. They were just saying that they were canning them, and because of how they phrased it, it appeared that it was just for the time being. Now, considering that Tom King is a lousy writer, this is a win. Considering that Ava Duvernay was behind A Wrinkle in Time, which, according to those who are fans and read the original book, didn't really have much of what we had in the book, I think that this was a wise decision so that fans do not have to suffer, and don't have to endure these horrible takes that she might have had with the new gods. However, I also see this as a defeat to the Snyder fans and those supporting the restoration of the Snyderverse, as they are now calling it. Simply put, because they are now canning any relationship and any connection that could have been out there with Zack Snyder's vision. And of course, there are some who say that this is really not the case. Those are, for example, people the likes of Mikey Sutton, who is writing and, is editor-in-chief in Geekosity magazine, and he is a very well-informed insider, and I think that if anyone has accurate information, or at least more accurate information, well, that is him, of course. And he mentioned that this cancellation comes from AT&T and not really Warner Media. Of course, this is still driving more wind into the fires of this other rumor that is saying there's a civil war inside AT&T and Warner Media, similar to what happened with Kathleen Kennedy and Lucasfilm. Well, they are saying that there is a similar situation going on, where AT&T are on one side and Warner Media are on another side. You might think that, considering what Ann Sanoff has been saying about the Snyderverse being like a one thing of done, one and done, and that's it. That there is no plans for continuing this thing, that they want to do their own thing, and so on. I might understand why you see it that way. However, I also think that it's not really the case, because we're talking about parent companies here that have to look into their smaller companies and also demand answers from them. That's why I always saw too far-fetched the notion that Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau were sidelining Kathleen Kennedy and answering directly to Bob Iger. I don't really think that was the case, and I don't really think that is the case here. Like someone is sidelining Warner, or Warner is trying to sideline in a certain way AT&T. That is impossible. AT&T wanted something, and then Warner Media just complied with it because they are bound to it. What I can see is people feeling afraid that their jobs might not be that secure, that safe, and of course they want to prove their worth, and that's why they want to do their own thing without relying on the likes of Zack Snyder, or without having to wait until the higher-ups up there, the executives and all that, tell them what to do. That I can see. And it sounds more logical to me than thinking that there is a civil war, because it doesn't really make sense. If they want to keep their jobs, why would they go against their own parent companies? But that's an entirely different thing, and I might not even understand that very well, as I am not well versed in business management at all. What I see here is a win for those of us who really think that Tom King is not a good writer. For those who didn't like A Wrinkle in Time, this is also another win. For the Snyderverse fans, well, that's a different story. We will have to wait and see how this story unfolds. In the meantime, you can make your own decision about what is this.